Logan Paul of the Impulsive Podcast, Joe Rogan of the Joe Rogan Experience, Theo Vaughn this past weekend, Sean Ryan of the Sean Ryan Show, and Patrick David of PBD Podcast, and last but not least, Lex Fridman of the Lex Fridman Podcast. Reporters reviewed nearly 1,300 hours of footage from their channels, mapped out the podcasters' guest networks, and quantified the frequency of key political messages that they distributed to tens of millions of subscribers each day. To hear them tell it, America's in a desperate place, destabilized by soaring inflation, migrants streaming across the border, interest in Ukraine, which is the continuation of some sort of war where you're still giving weapons, you're still dumping weapons into Ukraine. Wait, Valuetainment finds out that MAGA wants him deported. This is from a while back. This is from a while ago, but it was pretty funny.
Not your founding fathers. Guy posts a picture of the Shah of Iran, says that's your founding father.
Oh, so funny.
But that tells you what, you know, a part of this, there's a nationalist.
This was during the H-1B debate where Patrick Bet-David found the truth the hard way, that a lot of the people that he's been serving do not consider him to be, a lot of people that he's serving do not actually consider him to be an ally or even a real American. I wonder why they don't consider that. Oh, that's right, because he's fucking brown, dude.
And there's white nationalists. White nationalists, Vinny, don't want.
He said there's nationalism and then there's white nationalists. I love that even in this process, he's still like, no, you don't understand. There's like some people who are racist towards other people, okay, not me. And then there's people who are racist towards me as well. And that's kind of messed up, okay? That's kind of messed up, guys. Why are you racist towards me? I'm one of the good ones. I'm sure he stopped supporting them after this, right? No. What do you mean? That's how his bread is buttered.
People like us here.
I know.
They just don't. White nationalists are a very different model.
What do you mean, you know? What do you mean? People like, what? Like Italians? People who are red? No, Patrick Bet-David, you're in a unique predicament, okay? Not the other guy.
You view me.
Yes, we have a thread of data from the Manosphere side of things that Bloomberg actually put together, and I'm going to cover that as well. Here it is. Bloomberg reviewed 1,000 hours of YouTube vids from 9 popular streamers and podcasters who cater to American men. We analyzed 2 years of guests and transcripts to see how they discuss political topics and understand their role as a new mainstream info hub. Okay, we don't have to watch it. What is this? This video is unavailable and it's private, so I guess I don't have to watch it. Yeah, I'm excited to look at this though, but I guess I can't until I create a freaking account. Also, I need to pee. So let's listen to Jon Favreau, the liberal equivalent of such, real quick.
We're just days into the second term of President Donald Trump, and Democrats are desperately looking for a path forward as Republicans now control both chambers of Congress and the House. Our next guests may have the answer. With us now, the co-founders of Crooked Media and the hosts of Pod Save America, Tommy Vitor, Jon Favreau, and John Lovett. Thank God you guys have the answer. I wanted to ask you so many questions about diet, about exercise, social. So I got a couple things I want to ask you guys about to kick it off. But first, it's great. It's awesome. It really is that you all served in the Obama administration, because you know, when people are saying all is lost, it's all over. You know, reminds me when we got elected in '94, Republicans, U.S. News had, it's like, is it the end of the Democratic Party? And I put it on, you know, my coffee table in my office, threw that one away pretty quickly. After Barack Obama won, and I wrote this down, won by 7.5 points, 365 electoral votes. The House, Democrats didn't have a 1-vote majority. They had a 78-vote majority. The Senate, not a 3-vote majority. Democrats had an 18-vote majority. So you guys have to be laughing every day because, you know, power is like vapor. It disappears pretty damn quickly. You guys have to be laughing when you hear Democrats going, it is the end. Republicans have a 1-vote advantage in the House. I mean, can you guys talk Democrats through that and explain how this does happen? Elections happen, and it's not the end of the Democratic Party.
I'm just kidding. I'm not going to put you through this. Is that Connery's pants on the top right? How dare you? Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, were descended of Aeneas. Aeneas brought his people to Italy from Troy, and Troy is in Turkey. Thus, rather the Ottoman Turks being the continuation of the Romans, I'd argue that Rome was founded by the Turks, and thus was a Turkic nation from the start. Romulus and Remus were even raised by wolves. This is true. I was about to mention that. I love mentioning that. Yes, Romulus and Remus were raised by wolves. You know who else places wolves as like a very important figure in their mythology? You guessed it, the Turks. Okay, that's why the ultranationalists do this. Okay, this is a symbol of ultranationalism in Turkey because it's the wolf. This is supposed to be a wolf. Both the Romans and the Turks were furries and are still. Turks are still furries. Not beating the Panturanist allegations. No, not at all. I'm beating everyone in the head with Panturanist truths. Gift link. Thank you. Thank you for the gift link, chatter. So, as Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th U.S. president on Monday, he was surrounded by his family, donors, wealthy tech executives. Just a few feet farther away stood a political newcomer who has been credited with encouraging lots of votes, Joe Rogan. The fact that Rogan, the host of the world's most popular podcast, watched from the Capitol Rotunda as Republican luminaries like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis were confined to the overflow, speaks volumes about the new dynamics at play in Washington and the media writ large. Over the past 2 years, a set of massively popular podcasters and streamers cemented themselves as the new mainstream source of information for millions of young men, and according to new Bloomberg analysis, used their perch to rally those constituents in support of Trump and the political right. In an effort to understand the media diet of a generation, Bloomberg watched and analyzed over 2,000 videos from 9 prominent YouTubers. The YouTubers were Aiden Ross, Andrew Schultz. Well, Aiden Ross is a kick streamer, but the Nelk Boys of the Full Send Podcast, Logan Paul of the Impulsive Podcast, Joe Rogan of the Joe Rogan Experience, Theo Vaughn this past weekend, Sean Ryan of the Sean Ryan Show, and Patrick David of PBD Podcast, and last but not least, Lex Fridman of the Lex Fridman Podcast. Reporters reviewed nearly 1,300 hours of footage from their channels, mapped out the podcasters' guest networks, and quantified the frequency of key political messages that they distributed to tens of millions of subscribers each day. To hear them tell it, America's in a desperate place, destabilized by soaring inflation, migrants streaming across the border, and the beginnings of the Third World War. Gender politics have gotten out of hand, while schools and the medical establishment duped the public. All true, baby. All true facts stated. You know what I'm saying? The same messages were communicated in Trump's inaugural address on Monday. Now that Trump is back in power, the broadcasters are well positioned to help build support for this political agenda. For his political agenda. Why did you read Patrick's name with an Indian accent? Patrick David? Do you think that's an Indian accent? No, that's Patrick David's accent. Anyway, Patrick David, Iranian. Okay. No, Asmon, that list is invalid now. Asmongold is a newcomer to this. Okay. These guys have been at it for a while. Calm down. Asmongold, and I would say a lot of the anti-woke video game commentary sphere is complementary to this. They're complementary to this world, right? And they play somewhat of a formative role in the way that like people become more right wing, but they're not like, these are the main guys. Also, these aren't even just the main guys, but like these are the guys that Bloomberg chose to cover. In the months leading up to the election, hosts had more politicians and pundits on their show and discussed issues more frequently. Of the broadcast videos that reached over 1 million views on YouTube during the time span Bloomberg reviewed, more than a third of the videos mentioned voting or U.S. elections, often with the host explicitly calling on listeners to vote. 37% of highly viewed videos mention voting or elections. Hosts and guests frequently discuss voting and the elections over the past 2 years. So as the election nears, as the election gets closer, they start talking about voting more openly. None of the broadcasters styled themselves as political pundits, and their conservative talking points were sandwiched between freewheeling discussions of sports, masculinity, internet culture, gambling, and pranks, making the rhetoric more palatable to an apolitical audience. The difference here is that this is not a complex and sophisticated propaganda operation. And if you were to think that this is a complex and sophisticated propaganda operation, you would be wrong, and you would actually misunderstand the more nefarious nature of how reactionary politics thrives. Just pointing that out there. Okay? This is a major point that I try to get across for a lot of people. I am not seen in the same vein as these guys, even though they have virtually the same level of political output, if not more political output than someone like myself at times. And the reason for that is because I'm I am first and foremost seen as a political commentator. First and foremost, am a political commentator. Whereas these guys are not seen as political commentators, but mere apolitical vessels where politics seems to go through. But they happen to organically have a lot of right-wing adjacent social commentary. Okay? Although I'm basically on the opposite side of this spectrum, where like I do a lot of not inherently political things, even though my audience also hates it when I do that. And complains constantly when they're like, why are you not doing politics? Because you're stupid and you don't understand it. But there's a reason for it. One, because politics is lame and boring. And also, two, because it's good to expand my boundaries. Anyway, we all know about the podcast election. Despite many of these podcasts position themselves as comedians or simply entertainers, they were actually regularly political. 30% of their top guests from the past 2 years were politicians or pundits. Donald Trump appeared on all of the channels. Andrew Tate appeared on 3 of the channels. Tucker Carlson appeared on almost all the channels. Elon Musk, Shane Gillis, J.D. Vance, Ben Shapiro, Dana White, Kai Cenat, Jake Paul. So like they wanted to show like how many famous people they had on, and out of all the top famous people that they had on, how many of them were considered? How many of them were considered? They even have Destiny in there as a right wing. As a right-wing political pundit. They put Epstein in there. Even more interesting, they and their guests often talk about the same topics and ideas, which mostly align with Trump's agenda. Voting is a topic, whether arguing the 2020 election was stolen or urging their audience to vote, came up in 37% of the episodes over the past 2 years. Broadly, for me, this piece shows how these podcast and streamers prime their audience for Trump and, therefore, were easily able to endorse him as a candidate and possibly swing their listeners to him. This past week, they attended the inauguration. Rogan was right in the Capitol Rotunda. Do you think Shane Gillis is right-wing? No, not everyone here is right-wing. I don't think Kai Cenat is right-wing either. Okay? They're just simply saying, like, out of the guests that they had, who were political in nature, okay? They're not saying Destiny is also a right-wing content creator either. They're saying Epstein was also a political guest that 3 of these people had. Patrick Bet, David Lex Freeman, and Aiden Ross. The ones that they have bolded out are political guests. This is a list of, like, some of the top guests that have been on almost all the podcasts. Okay, that's it. But let's get back to it. According to Edison Research, close to 50% of people over the age of 12 listen to a podcast monthly. Rogan's 3-hour interview with Trump in late October drew about 50 million views on YouTube. Zuckerberg, for his part, recently loosened Meta's policies on Facebook and Instagram to allow more of the type of rhetoric that's common among podcasts, such as disparagement of transgender people. He added Ultimate Fighting Championship CEO Dana White, who encouraged Trump to join as a guest on such podcasts, to Meta's board. Elon Musk, the owner of X, has made product changes to allow longer video streaming in support of podcasters and joined several guests himself. Google, meanwhile, wants to work through some Republican perceptions of its liberal bias and show that YouTube has already long been popular with conservatives, according to a person familiar with the company's thinking. This is not also surprising. What are you guys arguing about? Shut up. Anyway, YouTube has always been a fairly right-wing, like had a pretty robust right-wing media ecosystem. And then when people tried to make the false assertion that YouTube was woke or something. I mean, YouTube played a pretty formative role in the right-wing media ecosystem being created, and actually many people going down the right-wing rabbit holes and becoming more far-right than they previously were before they started encountering the YouTube videos of Joe Rogan, and then slowly but surely through a sequence of guests that Joe Rogan had on his podcast, become fans of the likes of Milo Yiannopoulos or Stefan Molyneux or Gavin McInnes or numerous other people. Over the weekend before the inauguration, many of the podcasts were coveted guests of the parties hosted by YouTube, Spotify, and other organizations. YouTube declined the comments. Spotify said podcasts offer candidates a direct and influential way to engage with their audiences, noting that both Trump and Democratic rival Kamala Harris took advantage of the medium. I think that this is also an abdication of duty from the Democratic Party and the awful ways in which they campaign, that basically all of these websites are completely captive to the right-wing politics. And there was a lot more initial investment, a lot more upfront investment to pumping as much right-wing commentary and right-wing propaganda on these platforms as possible from the likes of institutional investors into mainstream media outlets, as well as independent media outlets like the Daily Wire. That's precisely the reason why you have the likes of Ferris Wilks, for example, an oil baron in Texas who was recently in some controversy by the Texas state legislature for virtually buying out Texas politicians, key Texas politicians like the Attorney General Kim Paxton, and also the Lieutenant Governor, and even the Governor Greg Abbott was being yelled at by the Texas state legislature in a bipartisan manner for his direct involvement in influencing Texas state affairs. That person is also the primary investor of the Daily Wire and Prager University, which is now owned by the Daily Wire. Just so you understand, these guys also happen to be Republican Party mega donors across the board, oil barons. Now, that's what you need to understand, is that the same people, there's a cross-pollination between independent right-wing content creators and also right-wing mainstream media outlets such as Fox News. But that can only happen because the right-wing political operatives are aligned almost entirely with the political goals of the Republican Party. Okay? And the political goals of the Republican Party are completely aligned with the interests of the super wealthy. The problem with the Democratic Party not being able to recreate this exact same thing is because the Democratic Party presents itself as an anti-corporatist party, or at least is supposed to present itself as an anti-corporatist party, but it is a pro-corporate party in the same vein as the Republicans are. Having said that, however, the voters of the Democratic Party are not as pro-corporatist as the voters of the Republican Party are. And this is precisely the reason why there is a massive divergence with the interests and demands being made by the base of support within the heart of the Democratic Party and what the Democratic Party actually ends up doing in the legislative side versus the needs and demands that are oftentimes culture war silliness made by the base of support at the heart of the Republican Party. Part of that is because the base of support of the heart of the Republican Party that are culture warriors, right, want things that are harmful to other social groups, but oftentimes simply marginalized populations, and don't actually disrupt the pro-capitalist hierarchical order. On the Democratic Party side, however, the culture warriors that want or demand things oftentimes want like diversity, representation, and the like, things that I don't have an issue with, things that I think are good. Having said that, however, they also want things that aren't necessarily great for capital owners, things that are not necessarily great for our corporate mega donors, right? Things that are inherently anti-capitalist, things that are inherently going to diminish profit margins, like free health care. So the Democratic Party will present itself as defenders of the working class without actually offering anything, any material benefits to the working class when they come into power. This creates a lot of resentment and hostility from the base. This is why I always say Republicans are afraid of their base. Democrats run away from their base. The Democrats despise their base of support. The Republicans actually love, hug, and kiss their base of support, no matter how radical the base of support might be. But ultimately, the radical politics of the Republican base are not disruptive to the capitalist order. They're not disruptive to the interests of the bosses, the interests of corporations. The Democratic Party's base of support, however, wants a litany of different things that are objectively good for improving the material conditions of the American labor force. And that's precisely the reason why the Democrats oftentimes spend more time disciplining its base and also purging its ranks with what they declare as radicals, people like Bernie Sanders, or oftentimes they try to ensure that the progressive or radical members of the Democratic Party are made to be servile, made to be docile. They will, capture them and essentially commodify them. This also creates additional resentment within the base of support that goes, I don't want trans people to die, but I also want to make sure that everyone has health care. What the hell's going on? Okay? Anyway, let's continue. With the podcast's audience is skewing about 80% male on average, according to people familiar with the show's listener demographics, the host connected directly to a voting bloc that helped propel Trump back to the White House. Of the 903 podcast guests tracked by Bloomberg in the past, only 106 people, or 12%, were women. Men, and particularly white men, have long made Trump's core support base, but in November's election, young men swung especially hard to the right. More than half of men under 30 supported Trump, according to the AP Votecast survey of more than 120,000 voters, though outgoing President Joe Biden won the group in 2020. Exit polls have shown that Trump received more support from young men than any Republican candidate in more than 2 decades. We definitely help with the young male vote, Kyle Gerard, a member of the Nelk Boys, said in an interview. On the podcast, we just speak our mind, try to be true to ourselves, and say what we think. Above all, the broadcasters described American men as victims of a Democratic campaign to strip them of their power, a comforting message to a dispirited audience. These days, young men are lonelier than ever, with those aged 18 to 23 the least optimistic about their futures and having the lowest levels of social support, according to Equimundo's 2023 State of the American Men report. Trump and his allies showed up for young men in places where they were already spending their time and supplied them with answers. That's right. This is important to understand, and it's important to address. Young men are friendless and getting absolutely no pussy whatsoever. There is a genuine crisis. Some people think the no bitches mentality, that absolutely getting zero bitches mentality from young men is a consequence of their porn addiction. I certainly don't think so. I think that there is something far worse than just like being deeply and cripplingly addicted to porn. But then again, when I was growing up, porn was not as readily accessible. So maybe readily accessible and readily available pornographic material might have actually warped the brains of young men. But in any case, there is a coochie crisis for sure. Trump is expected to continue prioritizing the broadcasters once the administration gets underway, treating them like an alternative press corps, said Aaron Ginn, CEO of AI infrastructure startup Hydra Host and the co-founder of the Foundation for American Innovation, a center-right think tank for conservatives in Silicon Valley. We are in this media environment where people want to authentically know somebody. And when they feel like they authentically know somebody, they feel like they can trust them more, Ginn said. So use women as bait, want to go get laid, go left. Wait, what? No, that's obviously not what I'm saying. And I don't think you are implying that I'm saying that. But I will say, whether you were genuine in that as a criticism or not, that is how a lot of people perceive the left. Like constantly in a state of misunderstanding people and weaponizing those misunderstandings in the most annoying ways possible. So the left does, and I'm not talking about the Democratic Party, I'm talking about the actual left here. The left does have a marketing problem. The left does have a branding problem. Now, I am of the mindset that the left's branding problem is marginal and inconsequential in comparison to the far more obvious problem that the left has, which is that it's the only group of people that are dedicated to anti-capitalist thought and anti-capitalist sentiment being expressed when, you know, Red Scare propaganda and the Cold War has purposely gutted the American labor force and also any kind of, political dissidents that might have even remotely anti-capitalist thought baked into their commentary. This is precisely the reason why I am one of the only people alongside like many other content creators that have very little impact in this space in comparison to the endless, unlimited faucet of right-wing misinformers. Anyway, so there's that as well. This report should have talked about the people on the sidelines that are sometimes accidental initial funnel into this world. For example, how Rage always praises and hangs out with the likes of Sneeko, how Kai always mentions that Aiden is the best streamer ever, or how even Speed, as much as I like him, regularly collabs with Aiden as well. This web, intentional or not, is much larger than this single circle, in my opinion. Yes, these guys are massive content creators and are inherently also seen as quote-unquote apolitical. That's the other thing. These guys are seen as apolitical when their political output, and dare I say, their political influence might even be more sizable than someone like myself, who virtually every single person would immediately consider as a political actor. Okay? That's it. That's another part of the puzzle as well. Anyway, I've seen the rise of people using the phrase idpol, and I wonder what to do with it, because I agree sometimes, but it needs to be done with so much precision. Which I think a lot of people lack. I mean, I understand why everybody fucking hates identity politics, because the most common way that identity politics has been used is is basically weaponized against people that you are purposely misunderstanding the point of. It's rarely ever used against people who are actually engaging in the other side of identity politics, white identity politics, male identity politics, straight heterosexual identity politics, and things of that nature. Now, having said that, rad libs are fucking annoying. Okay? They are. And I say this as someone who is a man, okay? A heterosexual man, a heterosexual white man. So obviously, I draw the ire of a lot of rad libs in the similar vein. And they are poison for coalition building. That is just the fucking truth. Okay? It's just the truth. And many of them, when they hear me say stuff like this, will immediately go back to writing Twitter posts. But ultimately, they're no motion ass motherfuckers. They got no motion whatsoever. So it doesn't really matter. So I let them chirp all day, every day. Okay? Now, while they don't have any motion, they're still annoying. And people can fucking see them be annoying. And people actually say, well, this is how all of these woke lords are like. Okay? This is how all of them are like. This is just how they operate. And I happen to believe that a lot of that rad lib shit actually stems from a sense of powerlessness. Okay? That's where it comes from. They just know that they have no motion whatsoever and they can't make political changes. They can't make systemic changes. So what do? They constantly engage in cultural critique. Constantly in the most annoying ways possible. Okay? And inherently reactionary cultural critique. So it's fine. It happens. It's, just everybody knows it's annoying. Okay? Everybody understands it's annoying, but people still, try to do it. One example I will use of rad libs that used to have a lot of motion at the peak of the radical liberal anti-Trump resistance train in the first in the first Trump victory, in the aftermath of the first Trump victory, that kind of has died out, was the fact that there was a black lady on Twitter that said Indians are smelly. Then the white Cambridge University PhD olfactory writer person said, hey, this is really messed up. Don't call Indians sweaty. It's always shocking when I see other women of color put other women of color down and call them smelly. Okay? And then, lo and behold, the rad libs came after Dr. Allie Lukes and made her delete that tweet. She deleted the tweet and also apologized. Apologized for engaging in misogynoir. It is not misogynoir to say, hey, don't say Indians are smelly. What the fuck are we doing? That is insane. The smell PhD lady was correct. Okay? It does not matter. Bro, why do you always have to talk about black women L's? Like, look away. It's embarrassing, please. Okay, I'm just using this as one example. Okay? The point is, that is the last time that's the first time in a long time where I saw that kind of like rad lib idiocy run amok. Okay? And it got a lot of motion. What is this? I don't want smell lady to comment or quote tweet on indigenous issues, people or smells. I think she's collecting information and sourcing free labor and then trying to facilitate conversation about race. Like, sometimes when I read stuff like this, I genuinely think, like, did a CIA officer write this? And then I realize, like, no, this is just how people are. They're just mentally ill. I'm sorry. Like, if you are hyper focused on, like, engaging in wrecker behavior, okay, in an already powerless left coalition that seemingly can't be put together ever, you are mentally ill, okay? So you both don't want her to comment or tweet on it, but also are commenting that you don't think she knows indigenous people exist because she hasn't commented on it yet. You're mad at her for both actions she could possibly take and are determined to get outraged regardless. Yeah, I think she's collecting information and sourcing free labor and then trying to facilitate conversation about race without really centering white supremacy as something she benefits from. Like, I'm just setting up that boundary because white academics do source here and they fiddle, they prod, and they mind. She seems nice and well-intended, but I'm not into it. Like, this is a modern example, yes. Like, people shouldn't do this. And another thing that I always talk about, for those of you who don't know, okay? Another thing that I always talk about, if you're new here, maybe you're unfamiliar, maybe you've seen clips of me talk about these things and don't fully understand. Maybe you got duped into believing that I'm like this as well, okay? But I get very mad about stuff like this. And as a matter of fact, when clip me responding to someone like this in a heated moment and then say that I'm against that marginalized group or something, like indigenous population would be the group now, or trans people would be the group if I were to yell at like a radlib who is, pro-trans and thinks I'm not doing enough or whatever. The thing that I get very frustrated about this kind of sentiment is because I can smell the fucking narcissism in it. A lot of people will literally just, in the left, that want to be kind people, that want to be open-minded people, will just will succumb to standpoint theory, okay? And we'll go, oh, this person could not be like narcissistic in an incredibly unproductive way because they are using emancipatory language. I think that there is a tendency for a lot of tender left, former liberals to basically think, oh, when someone is using emancipatory language and saying the right words and talking about centering their own, marginalized experiences, okay, that must mean that they automatically have something to say that's right. And people don't have the capacity to sift through this information and go, wait, maybe the person I'm talking about is just like selfishly trying to center themselves in the conversation due to a bunch of shit that's going on in their lives. Or maybe because they want to be fucking annoying. And people do this in my community all the time. And I yell at them all the time and I ban them all the time. That's just how it is. What is this? She done shit like this before. Were you also centering indigeneity when you accused Joyce Carol Oates of being too ugly to empathize with Marilyn Monroe? Wait, what? After the 2022 film Blonde, based on the life of Marilyn Monroe, faced criticism for failing to break away from the media's habit of fetishizing and re-exploiting women, Male Hot attracted controversy for stating that Joyce Carol Oates, who wrote the novel on which the film was based, a literary non-hottie who shouldn't have written the novel, and women who look and act like Oates have no compassion or love for women like Monroe. What? Like, that one lady... Leftists tend to be too credulous of right-wing populists just because they use similar language. Like, I get it. It's a tricky environment. These are tricky waters to swim in, because if someone pops off at like a random, let's say black person, a black woman who is criticizing me for being a man, okay? For being a man and also saying that like the labor movement was predominantly dominated by men and we can't enjoy, we can't actually, there's no more coalition building with men. We just have to be anti-men. Let's say in this hypothetical, a black woman on TikTok said this about me, right? Now, you don't know anything about me in this process. You heard that person use emancipatory language, even though their perspective was anti-labor and inherently anti-solidarity and inherently reactionary, right? And I respond to that by saying, this person is all three of those things that I just mentioned, okay? Well, if you yourself are a black woman or a black man, you've heard white guys that look exactly like me, that sound exactly like me, say disparaging things about black people 1,000,000 times over. So it's understandable that you will go and look at that situation and go, that guy's a fucking misogynist. He's doing misogynoir. I get it. I understand. That's why I say these are tricky waters to swim in, especially when there is definitely an issue with a lot of leftist commentators, for example, online, and them not fully understanding like black liberation, black struggles, and black issues in particular, and oftentimes talking over black people, right? I try to do my best. By the way, the black woman example I gave you was a real person. That really happened. But so I get it. I understand it. I understand how some people who come across as like-minded individuals can be totally blinded by their own personal privilege and actually say things that don't correspond to your lived reality, your lived existence, right? It makes sense. I get it. I guess the point I'm trying to make in this circumstance is that you should not succumb to the whims of radical liberal separatist politics, and instead try to operate on a Marxist framework that still abides by the class standard, where you don't actually cast aside different forms of oppression, oppression conducted through the basis of race, sex, gender, sexual interests or whatever, right? But ultimately, the thing that brings everyone back is supposed to be class-based. Okay? That's it. That's what that's the standard that I abide by. Okay? And I also personally understand that many people that have a lot of somewhat reactionary opinions have developed those reactionary opinions because of the systems that they exist under. Rad libs oftentimes will recognize before anyone else that America is a white supremacist nation that is heteronormative, that is built on the backs of slave labor and built on the principles of genocide. Is he talking about Jax? No, I'm not talking about Jax at all. No. As a matter of fact, my conversations with Jax are a perfect example of what I think is productive. Okay? This is a different TikToker. Jax and I have a disagreement, I think, on sex work. Okay? A difference in opinion on sex work. But that's fine, because outside of that, we agree on a lot of things. Like, we agree on the overwhelming amount of problems that American society is facing. Jax is also a TikToker, right? And the conversation between her and I led to a little bit of drama initially, right? Careful, Jax hates you again. Wait, she does? Oh, I didn't realize she hates me now. It doesn't matter. No motion, as I said. But initially, that conversation was seen from the outside world as me, a white man, basically like, bullying and yelling at a black woman and being fucking ruthless and doing misogynoir or whatever, right? But ultimately, we came to the conclusion that, like, we have some disagreements, okay? So you're not saying marginalized communities can't talk about these identity issues. It's just that we shouldn't let it keep us from class issues and forming coalitions? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And this doesn't mean you need to capitulate to racists or transphobes or whatever. Okay, the switch up. I don't care. I still don't care. I don't care. Because once again, no motion. Okay, you have to understand. It's purity testing being done all the time, and oftentimes being done to people who are like-minded. If you are a political commentator of my size, and I urge other political commentators that are large as well to not entertain these battles, okay? To not entertain these battles with people that are yelling at them, because it's stupid at the end of the day. Most people that have hated me throughout my, 5-year, 6-year career on Twitch have oftentimes come to recognize that maybe they misunderstood my perspective initially, or maybe realize that we might have minor disagreements on certain issues, but ultimately we're on the same side. Okay? That's it. Now, this does not mean, what? Well, to be fair, you don't leash your dog. What? Okay. You can't, though. The entire slop depends on the drama. I know. What? Oh my God. Talking about black issues without having black women, more black men on the podcast is cringe, though. Dude, in a conversation where I'm talking about, like, rad libs engaging in wrecker behavior because the content doesn't suit their immediate purposes, being an inherently selfish thing that people engage in, and it's actually just a restructured form of narcissism that masquerades as real valid critique, real valid progressive critique, and you just proved exactly what I was talking about, is crazy. Like, I am a rich white heterosexual man, okay? I'm a rich white heterosexual man. Virtually every single issue I talk about does not immediately hurt me, okay? I guess I should just shut the fuck up about all of these issues and just become one of these other rich white heterosexual assholes that constantly talk about right-wing politics, especially when it's obviously materially beneficial. Do you not understand? This is at the heart of the problem. If you constantly push people, you can't expect them to always stay the course. Not everyone has a fucking strong tendency to abide by their moral compass. People do inevitably respond to people being fucking annoying and go, guess what? This is why I left the left. That's how it works for some people, especially when there are so many financial structures that benefit people leaving this kind of annoying leftist politics behind and moving to the right. This is not a threat, by the way, before people just immediately assume, here goes Hasan. I knew it. I was right about him. He's threatening to go to the right or some shit. That's not what I'm saying at all. Okay? I'm not saying that. And by and large, these sorts of subtle instances of critique that are inherently just people wanting to be recognized, wanting to be heard, that masquerade as like some broader, real, progressive critique of a progressive content creator are fucking annoying and also have a tendency to reassert reinforce the problem that I was mentioning, which is wrecker behavior. To be honest, as a black viewer, I just watched knowing HasanAbi is not for black viewers, but to get white male marauders to understand what we already do. That's it. That's why I do what I do. My job, and the way I see it, is to get oftentimes white, okay, but sometimes not white, people to understand systemic racism. My job is not to teach trans people about trans existence. You know that already. You're trans, okay? The way I see it, my goal is to use this to try to build solidarity. Do you really think you'd have an overnight audience if you overnight grifted to the right after all the years of what you've said? Genuinely curious on your take? No. It would take some time. I would have to slowly but surely, just like slowly but surely move to the right on certain issues. And then the backlash simply pushed me in that direction. That sort of shit. It's happened a million times over at this point. I mean, incredibly stupid people have been able to do this successfully, like fucking Dave Rubin and Tim Pool, So anyway, yeah, I also do have a firm belief that if you fucking left the left because you got annoyed with the left, and like what you're just admitting that you have no moral compass. Like your heart wasn't really in it, I guess. Okay. Jax has always been right. Maybe, I guess. Yeah. Saying that if she was saying that, like, this is a bit of a switch up from what you said surrounding if people and when people leave the left is not because of any kind of annoying people, but because they have no spine and no true basis in empathetic morals. I have no idea if I'm reading it right. No, I'm saying, I just repeated that. I am saying that. Yes. If annoying people are able to push you away, if annoying people that constantly egg at you are capable of pushing you away from your political trajectory, then yeah, your politics are not rooted within empathy. That's it. That's my point. Exactly. Delay, baby. Lamau, hit send on that shit before you explain that. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Yeah. She made a tweet about you with the Blake Lively situation saying that she was vindicated. Yeah, okay. Yeah, she's right. I fucking hate women. That's me. A woman hater. Who cares? It doesn't matter. I never saw it, and I never would have seen it if you guys didn't go and search it out. You know what I mean? Do you not understand? So, but that's the thing. That's the point, right? Like, there are certain things that people do that are, I think, completely unacceptable, right? Like, nothing is impossible to atone for, but there are certain things that if you do and you've done consistently and you keep doing, like, I don't know, fucking recording people without their consent while you're fucking them and then like sharing that with other people that you want to fuck, like, that's unacceptable, okay? That's ridiculous. But outside of that, and that's just one example that's top of mind right now because of the Epstein stuff. But what I mean is, like, people that go, oh, dude, I knew it. This guy was always a woman hater, and I'm just going to spend the rest of my understanding of his politics to look for any marker whatsoever that corresponds to that bias that I've cultivated, then yeah, you're going to think that way no matter what. And there's nothing I can do about it, okay? The point I always make is this. If I was such a fucking woman hater, or if I was such a transphobe, if I was so anti-black, why wouldn't I just say it? It's infinitely more profitable for me to be that way. You understand? Like, why wouldn't I just say it then? Why would I play this secret song and fucking dance? Do you see what I mean? Like, what? Is it the long con? Like, that's it. What? You might have BPD. Critique is annoying. I'm one of the good ones. Deflect the worst behavior. I'm not a rapist, so I must be a feminist. Some people are motivated by things other than money. Yeah, like you. You're motivated by the unimaginable amount of mental illness that you're demonstrating in the chat right now. Is that what I said? 15-month subscriber. This is precisely why I say, like, this shit sucks, okay? It sucks. You always get mad at me? Yeah, because you're fucking mentally ill and fucking annoying in the exact ways that I'm describing how people think leftists are. That's why. Because you proved the fucking example while I'm in the process of describing what's fucking annoying about the way people think the leftists are. Use your fucking brain. Radfem, I'm a misandrist. I don't care. I don't care that you're a radfem or a misandrist. Ultimately, what the fuck is a misandrist? Again, powerless. That's the point. You're powerless. As a misandrist in a patriarchal society, you have no fucking power. So what do? The only power you have is to annoy people like me. That's the only motion you have. So you just constantly unload. That's it. That's the point. That's literally, you are proving the example that I'm giving you. Like, people who self-describe as being misandrists are so funny. Dude, what are you saying? You're just coming across as like, you're just coming across as annoying to people that are already hostile to you because you are a woman, okay? And then on top of that, now you're saying, no, like, I'm not just a woman, I'm also an anti-man woman. Okay, like, I get it. I get why you would be that way, but it's crazy to me. One in chat if misandrist? Okay. Anyway, and me too. I'm a misandrist as well. I'm dying. This has a parent yelling at his child in the backseat, be normal all over it. Yeah, I mean, that is a big chunk of what I do, really. But my point is, I am not your enemy. And if you think I'm your enemy, well, I might not be able to solve those problems. Okay? That's it. Like, if you think my output is inherently hostile to, and you know, playing a formative role in making people be anti-women, for example, it's like, yeah, I guess you're right. What do you want me to say? You know? But regardless of how fucking annoying that person is, okay, that's not going to change my perspective. That's my point. Every single group online that carries the torch of whatever marginalized position that they come from, whatever marginalized background they come from, have yelled at me and said that I am insufficient or outright hostile to their objectives, to improving their lives. Every single one. And my position on none of the issues I talk about has changed. Now, the reason why it hasn't is because I still maintain the position that if people are being fucking annoying to you and you're not getting love from these groups that you advocate for, and that's all it takes for you to just drop that political cause, then you weren't actually, you know, on board with it to begin with. But having said that, especially for the entry point of politics, I think a lot of people personally don't understand that in order for other people that are not like-minded and are inherently hostile to your worldview, in order for them to dip their toes in this kind of politics, you can't always be fucking annoying and inherently hostile. I get why you are, especially because the world sucks. And like, for example, if you're a trans person, you already encounter transphobia on a daily fucking basis, so you have a hair trigger, right? And I get that. I understand that. But, you know, try to go against your judgment here in this environment, specifically so that we are more welcoming of people that aren't immediately open-minded to the way that you exist, because most people are not. But they're not that way because they're just evil. Even though their output towards you is obviously evil, they're not inherently evil. They're not unchangeable figures that are just bad people, right? They're victims of their social conditioning. And my job is to always try and work against that. My job is to approach the subject matter, understanding that most people develop their bigoted opinions because this is what they think about it critically, okay? But yeah, maybe that's why sometimes I come across as more angry towards radfems and radlibs alike than I do to like a person like Bradley Martin, right? Because I understand that like as long as someone has charity, as long as someone is charitable and willing to learn and willing to change their perspective, I would much rather tackle that problem than a fucking radlib or a radfem who already is mostly aligned with the way I see the world on most issues. Okay? Like, I don't care. Yeah, yell at me all you want. Say I'm fucking a hater and hate women. Who cares? Yeah, okay, yeah, fine. Does that make sense? That's how I approach it. I used to think you were a racist, misogynist, etc. because I didn't watch your content, but saw others who would talk about you and call you those things. Eventually, I got tired of the LARPing and did my own research, aka downloaded Twitch, and I was surprised to find that you were none of those things. Yeah, I'm also not exactly inaccessible either. Like, sure, Twitch seems like a daunting task, right? 8 hours of content. That's crazy. No one's going to do that. But like, you could just go watch my YouTube videos or something, you know? I kind of disagree that a lot of these people see the world the same way. They often have an extremely black and white view of people, do not see redemption as possible, and are fundamentally opposed to things like restorative justice. I know. But that is also American social conditioning. What you just described right there is just how Americans are. That's why there are so many Americans who are like, I'm a progressive. I'm the biggest progressive of all time. Also, we should kill people who have done crimes. I'm like, what the fuck? That's crazy. I used to genuinely be a misinterest because of TikTok, and I started hating your content because I thought you were misogynistic, but I realized even though you may have some blind spots, you really do try to understand women and aren't against us in the same way that Andrew Tate is, lol. I can't expect everyone to have identical politics to me, and you're right. We generally morally align, so I need to chill for real. That's my hope. My hope is that people will arrive at this conclusion where it's like, you can have disagreements with people, okay? It's normal. It's, dare I say, healthy, okay? As long as you don't let those marginal disagreements become the only point of contention and the only thing that must be discussed at all times, because that spells disorder, that spells chaos, that is wrecker tendencies that a lot of leftists have, okay? I used to literally mix you and tram race together and dismiss you. Yeah, there's also an entire infrastructure, an entire industrial complex of content creators who present themselves as like apolitical drama slop tubers that fucking despise me and will literally say I am every bad thing combined. Sometimes in the same video, they'll say I'm anti-white, I'm an anti-white racist, and then they'll turn around and say I'm an anti-black racist. It does not matter. The entire point is to disparage me. So obviously, I don't fault people for, coming to those conclusions without actually, going through the content themselves and figuring it out on their own. But I do always maintain the position that as long as you stay in here for an extended period of time, in full video about any subject matter that you saw a clip from, you will most likely realize that you were duped initially. That's why this community is now filled to the brim with people who are like, I misunderstood your position because of all the clips that I had seen. Yeah, D fans will start doing Berlin stuff under every mildly positive post about you. I know. They immediately will just be like, they found that one tap, that one vein to tap over and over again, where they'll just like fucking totally lie. Like you did with Candace Owens. Wait, what? Candace Owens? Candace Owens is a right-wing content creator that did a documentary about how George Floyd was not actually killed by a police officer, but instead was he actually died because of a drug overdose. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? She's a white supremacist. I remember that guy who made a cartoon about how socialists become fat cats at the height of your house controversy, and I was like, yeah, fuck Hasan. See, that's the other thing. A lot of that is just repurposed, old school, Red Scare, anti-socialist propaganda that is being applied once again. And other people who think that they themselves are progressive-minded people literally fall for it, okay? I used to occasionally watch another leftist account who didn't like you, so I was like, oh, I guess he's just an asshole, but I came here and agree with the vast majority of the time and think you're not bad. Thank you. Anyway, I literally saw someone on Reddit today describe you as an anti-Semitic sex tourist. Yeah. No, they say that. They used to say that all the time. They said that when I went to Japan. They were like saying I'm a passport bro. Like, dude, I'm sorry, but if you genuinely think that like I fit the mold of a person who has to go to a country that America has dominated to be able to like get laid or whatever, or need like a servile woman who I can dominate with a power structure, with an unjustifiable power structure over them, you're out of your fucking mind, dude. What are you talking about? Like, you could say that about a lot of people, okay? But saying that about me is fucking hilarious. Like, what are you talking about? No, I'm not a passport bro. Yes, you're right. I'm something much worse than a passport bro. I'm a fucking weeb. Anyway, hold on. This is sick. Every opinion of yours, I do agree with several points, mostly regarding the wildly bad America has done and still does, but I enjoy watching your stuff because it's always good to have another voice in the room to bounce thoughts off of. No, the Trump interview hasn't come out yet. We were waiting for it. Can you interview Trump? No. Let's get back to this Bloomberg article now, okay? I think we definitely figured out why it's much more difficult for someone who is of sound mind and reasonable to build a sizable left-wing audience. I think this little wonderful sidestep showed exactly why most people don't want to do this shit, okay? And don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And a lot of apolitical people also stay far the fuck away from this kind of politics, you know? Because, I'm sorry, if you're not insanely committed to advancing these causes, to the outside world, we are so mentally ill and so fucking annoying. And I try to actively work against that by being normal in public all the goddamn time, but it still doesn't matter. You feel me? I don't think Mike from PA Caroline get as much flack as you, though. You're a particular magnet for this shit. Yeah, because I have 40 to 50,000 people watching me every day. Of course I'm a magnet for this shit. For people, I am literally the personal embodiment of socialism and socialist hypocrisy. That's just the way they approach it, because a lot of people are also parasocial, you know? But that's it. Anyway, Bloomberg looked at most of these content creators, and the typical format of the show is a long-form interview with a guest. Reporters found that guests are often famous personalities with broad cultural appeal, including athletes, musicians, comedians, entrepreneurs, and internet influencers. The content is billed as entertainment for men. Okay? These are the different, like, the guests that people have is what they're showing. Trump's appearances drew significant viewership across the shows. His interviews were the #1 episodes by view count for the majority of the programs tracked by Bloomberg in the past 2 years. Altogether, 9 episodes with Trump as a guest drew more than 100 million views. Joe Rogan making up 50 of it, by the way. Trump's personality and history are compatible with the program's messaging on masculinity, according to Alice Marwick, director of the research at Data and Society Research Institute. It's like, don't be ashamed of your base manly desires. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty. Don't let anyone take you down, she said. You should be proud and strong. You should also go after people criticizing you. On the shows, hosts connect to their audiences using humor and advice and provide a framework for viewers on navigating their world, including their relationships with women, work, and popular culture. They challenge institutions, reinforce old-fashioned gender rules, and glorify men who appeared to have fallen out of favor with the public. Ahead of the presidential election, the show naturally champions Trump, a convicted felon running for president who survived multiple assassination attempts. Trump's often combative messaging also aligns with what succeeds on YouTube. The easiest route these days of viewership is by creating enemies, said Mike Malak, a co-host of the Impulsive podcast. It's me against the world. I'm the little guy standing up for what's right, against corporations, against the government greed, against Chuck Schumer. If you want to find a white knight, look to me. I'm your fucking guy. A year later, Trump was a guest on Impulsive, calling immigrants terrorists and stating that if he had been president, the Russia attack on Ukraine would have never happened. The male-oriented podcast tracked by Bloomberg each have their own style of show. Theo Von offers issues and childhood experiences with his interviewees, while Lex focuses on expert opinions and tech topics. Sean Ryan chats with people associated with the military and law enforcement. I 100% think Sean Ryan is like a CIA op, by the way. Like, he just always seemingly has these like former government officials and current government officials, and they almost always correspond to, in a conspiratorial manner for sure, but always correspond to like State Department attitudes and interests on any particular matter. I wonder why. And even the same goes for Joe Rogan. He went from being the conspiracy hub to a guy who talks to Mark Zuckerberg and does, to a guy who literally to a guy who literally fucking does reputation laundering for wealthy billionaire defense contractors. Is fucking nuts. Anyway, programs, flagrant, follow the most typical host interview talk show format, discussing news and popular culture, all while challenging political correctness. Yet even as the podcasts have tried to brand themselves uniquely, similar themes and characters appear across the network. Bloomberg's analysis of 2002 episodes show reveal how closely interconnected the podcast's relationships are and how much the show's talking points overlap. Over the past 2 years, 152 guests have made appearances on at least 2 of the shows. Recurring characters are common, not just as guests, but as friends of the shows, including UFC CEO White and comedian Shane Gillis. The effect gives viewers a sense of being inducted into the virtual close-knit friend group from home. Yeah. Notice how I'm not on any of these. Notice how I haven't been on a single one of these podcasts. By the way, I guess I've been on Flagrant. That's the only one out of all these podcasts that I've been on. Interesting. Appearing as a guest on multiple shows doesn't always mean successfully grabbing the audience's attention. According to Bloomberg analyst, the one-time presidential candidate and anti-vaccine activist Robert F. Kennedy was the most frequent guest across the shows in the last 2 years, but it wasn't great for business. Kennedy ranked as the 25th most popular guest by numbers of views. Yeah, probably because there's a certain quality to Robert F. Kennedy that doesn't lend itself to the auditory medium. The top guest by number of views across the network reveals the kind of content resonates with most of the broadcast audiences. The professional kickboxer and self-proclaimed misogynist Andrew Tate, who is currently under investigation by Romanian authorities, holds the second highest viewership on the podcast overall, despite appearing on only 3 shows. Tucker Carlson, the former Fox News host who appeared on 6 of the 9 channels tracked by Bloomberg, ranked 3rd by numbers of views, according to the analysis. Yeah, Tucker Carlson is popping, dude. I hate it. Although politicians and pundits make up only 15% of all guests, they make up 30% of the most viewed guests. As the election drew closer, more politicians and pundits were invited on the podcast. Anyway, look, the way I see it is this, okay? These guys are, I don't think they're card-carrying right-wingers, okay? I think that they have a lot of their own personal brand of politics. Like Joe Rogan is now a card-carrying right-winger, has been for a while, right? Patrick Bet-David, card-carrying right-winger, has been for a while. Can't speak for Sean Ryan. I don't know what Lex Fridman's personal politics are. It's indecipherable. He is the most centrist man on the planet. Aiden, I think, is genuinely too stupid to have any political opinion, no matter how racist. Like I think he's one of the few people that's like unironically too stupid to be racist. Like genuinely, like that would require him to do at least like some level of reading, and he cannot do that. Full Send Podcast, they're right-wingers, but it doesn't matter. They're fucking Canadian, but their output is definitely right-wing, and they are right-wing. Okay? Andrew Schultz, I don't think he voted for Donald Trump, even though everybody says he's racist recently. I'd be shocked if he voted for Donald Trump. Theo Von is another person that I think is like, Theo Von is another person, and so is Logan Paul. Okay? I'm not saying these people are good or bad. I'm not associating right-wing politics with bad or left-wing politics or liberalism with good. Okay, I'm certainly not doing that. But like Theo Von, I don't think is a right-winger at all, and neither is Logan Paul. Shockingly enough, I think controversial opinion. I don't think Logan Paul is out and about, openly right-wing guy. Now, Jake Paul, on the other hand, definitely a right-winger. Having said that, you can say allowing right-wing political promotion on your platform is not really good, and I agree. Okay, I agree. Okay, the Sean Hannity Trump interview is live already. Logan was such a surprise to me because I've been following him for so long. It just seems so far off from who he was or claimed to be. Is the interview live already? It's crazy. I watch Fox News Live so much that the first thing that pops up when I type live in my...
war going on, but with all that being said, I think it's